Hello. Today is the 6th of July, 2016, and we're discussing the consequences of the United Kingdom's exit from the EU or the European Union. We're going to have a discussion with Dane McCarthy, who has his own show, and I am Robert Whaley, retired historian from Ohio University, and this show is called Athens Speakout, number 372. So I'll begin with a provocative question for Dane. Why did the British voters choose to exit from the European Union about Friday, the 23rd of June, 2016? The vote was 52% of the UK voters wanted to leave the European Union, and 48% wanted to stay. And the UK's middle class were divided, about 50-55. No one knows what the middle class really believes. They don't have accurate polls. But the democratic idealists who believed in parliamentary democracy wanted to exit. And they were thinking of the glorious days of Britain from 1820 to 1951, when the democratic ideal was on the rise. And we had famous prime ministers like William Gladstone, Benjamin Disraeli, William Spencer Churchill, who believed in the viability of the two-party system, the Conservatives and the Liberals originally, and then the Liberals were replaced by the Labour Party, and democracy was in good shape up to 1951. Now, World War I, 1914, was the beginning of the British decline, and it's also the beginning of America's informal empire trying to take over the weakened British Empire. So anyway, the British were more advanced in social services. They had state insurance, health insurance, old age assistance, Social Security, long before the United States. On the eve of the First World War, they had the beginnings of the so-called welfare state. And then, of course, the British Labour Party won big in 1945. From 1945 to 51, you have the peak of the British Labour Party's power in the British House of Commons. During the New Deal under Franklin Roosevelt from 1932 to 45, the United States was moving toward socialism and liberalism and progressivism faster than the British, and the British were dominated by a conservative party in those years. So the Labour Party was more conservative than most of the European socialists. About 1/4 of the Labour Party believed in socialism, and another 3/4 were liberals, collaborators with trade unionism, and something like the American Democratic Party. And then that peaked in 1951, when inflation is what undermined the British Labour Party. The fact is, the United Kingdom doesn't have the wealth to finance the continuation of an empire and pay for socialized medicine and socialization of glasses and drugs and across-the-board Medicare. So that is why the British Labour Party had to resign, because they couldn't balance the budget. And the empire then continued under Winston Churchill's leadership, and they put more money with the American State Department in supporting and what you might say an informal empire. And the empire seemed to be alive up until 1956, when we have the Suez Crisis. And at that point, General Eisenhower, who was not an imperialist, was a pacifistic inclined New Deal Republican who served Roosevelt in invading Germany. But anyway, Eisenhower repudiated a British conservative conspiracy with the French Empire and the Israeli government, and those three powers decided to attack Egypt and seize the Suez Canal, right on the eve of Eisenhower's re-election. And Eisenhower said, no, I'm a peace candidate. I campaigned on peace in my first term. I was going to bring peace in Korea, and he did bring peace in Korea. So he then appeals to the UN and Nikita Khrushchev, let's turn the Suez Crisis over to the United Nations, and we'll put pressure on the British Empire and the French Empire and the Israeli aggression to go back to their status quo antebellum. And that led to further decline of the British Empire after it was over. Well, anyway, going back to 1914, they were already weakened by the First World War, because in the First World War, the British pound had to sell off their surplus stocks, and when the war was over, the United States became a creditor country, and the British were in debt to Wall Street. And the Suez Crisis was a continuation of the empire's decline. Anyway, I guess I'm... No, I have a little more comment on that. Getting back to the 23rd of June's vote on exit, most of the farmers voted to leave because they were in competition with the 27 other countries of Europe that could produce food at a cheaper price than the British could. So the farmers wanted out, and they wanted to install a tariff against the European Common Market. That was one group of the leavers, yes. And they wanted, the second reason was to restore parliamentary democracy, because parliamentary democracy was on decline, because the so-called parliament in Brussels is a rubber stamp parliament, and it's the executive branch and the banks that make all of the decisions. And they were getting tired of seeing British sovereignty decline. The excessive profits go to the banks in Britain and in the United States, and they are in collusion with the German banks and the French banks, and we are having growing world plutocracy in the European Union, in Britain, and in the United States. Let's see, I don't want to say anything more. Anyway, the costs of the Korean War, 1951. That was the reason why the British Labour Party got into trouble, because Churchill and the Tories wanted to contribute to the American war effort in Korea and participate in General McCarthy's UN force to stop the communist invasion at the 38th parallel. Well, that war turned out to be a stalemate. The United States and the United Nations did not win. Mao Zedong did not win. And Stalin didn't win. They fought for 3 years, and they decided, one after another, that it was a mistake. And Stalin was the first one out, and said to Mao Zedong, if you want to fight this, you do it with your own men. But our MiGs are being shot down by the superior American Air Force, so that's up to you. Then Mao fought for another 2 years, and then he finally got tired after he lost about 1 million men. He said to Kim Il-sung, he wanted to keep the war going, okay, I've decided that we have to have a truce. Not at the 38th parallel, but near the 38th parallel, at a famous line called the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone, and there is a ceasefire but no peace treaty, and the State Department and the Foreign Office then fought a stalemate And it was not a winning war, but it does cause inflation. It does cause the advance of the British debt and the American debt, and they let the ordinary people who have descendants pay the debt off later in life. Where that debt will go is anybody's guess. So the British banks are taking the excess profits out of the middle class, and the British gross domestic product in the United Kingdom is being invested in Latin America, Africa, the United States, globally, and the British insurance companies are part of this. They're making money in the Middle East, and the plutocracy is growing. And there are 27 countries in the EU, and gradually they are recognizing that there's going to be a reduced standard of living because of climate change. And the rich governments are getting richer inside the EU. And since 1945, the French economy, the German economy, is growing faster in GDP than the British gross domestic product. Well, do you have any questions, comments about that first provocative question?
Well, it's a really complicated question to answer. There's a lot going on, and I think you touched on some of it, for sure, a lot of it.
Okay.
We have to put it in its historical context for certain.
Good.
And what is something you didn't touch on is that Britain is an island, and it's separated from the mainland.
That's a channel.
And that itself
is a help.
Has always made the British and the people in Great Britain feel a little different about themselves and their position in the world, so that they have a physical separation. Right. And now, with their alarm at losing national sovereignty, they have decided that they're going to go it alone, and apparently, if Article 50 is triggered by the government, which will set the wheels in motion to exit the European Union, then it will exit. Now, they haven't, just because they made a vote, it doesn't mean that it's over.
That's right.
You know, because
Article 50 is the article in the UN, the European Union's Brussels group.
Well, they have
and they have to negotiate that. You just can't withdraw.
Well, right, but the British, and this is a way that the European Union sort of plays dirty pool, because they don't play fair. They don't want people to leave.
That's right.
And they have figured out ways to keep people in the European Union right from the start, and also to get them into the European Union. They have ignored referendums in the past.
That's right.
And they just go ahead and bowl through.
Right.
And this is why a lot of people who are in all over the EU, in many, many different countries, not just Great Britain, are very worried about the future of the EU.
Right.
And so that the whole project is now
in limbo.
Very, it's very much on a balance. Now, the plan of the EU originally was that you would begin with a financial union, and then gradually that would they would get stronger and stronger until it would become a political union as well.
I have a little dissent there. It didn't begin with a financial union. It began with the Monet Plan. Do you know much about the Monet Plan?
Well, I'm thinking of the common market way back when.
All right. Well,
you know, that's sort of the first step.
All right. Okay.
You know, where you lower the trade barriers. And you start to work together as a group, a financial union.
It wasn't financial. The first common market agreement was in 1951. It was called the European Steel and Coal Community. And it was based on the prevention of World War III. Because in World War I and in World War II, France and Germany were hostile. the French had the iron ore and the Germans had the coal. And they each had a monopoly and an oligopoly of their own steel industry. So Monet says, we don't want another war. We're going to have a union between France and Germany. Leave England out. They knew it was an island. They knew the British were not financial. The British were tied financially to the United States. Well, Monet is saying, give up on the United States and Britain. Let's go between France and Germany. And there was a six-power agreement. France and Germany and Italy. Italy was kind of carried along. Those were the three major ones. And then they had the Benelux countries, Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg. They were real small. Well, the Dutch were a great trading empire, like the British. They had the Dutch Indies, and they used to import morphine and opium and coffee and spices, and they were at the mouth of the Rhine River, and they made money exporting all of that to the poor Germans and Swedes and Hungarians. And so anyway, the Dutch Empire was ahead of the British Empire. And in 1624, the Dutch settled in Manhattan and called it New Amsterdam. And in 1664, the Duke of York, the brother of the king, conquers New Amsterdam and says, okay, this is New York from now on. And he defeated the Dutch. Well, the Dutch hung on to Java and the Spice Islands. And the Dutch Empire survived right up to 1949. So the Dutch Empire was viable because of its trading ability. So the inner six were Holland, Belgium, Luxembourg. They were just two little tiny states. And Luxembourg became the financial center, but it was very weak compared to the British and America. It was just a financial center. It was a safe haven. That's what Luxembourg was. High salaries to escape the big powers. Well, anyway, Luxembourg, Belgium, France and England, and not England, France, Germany, and Italy, the end of three, and Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg, founded the European Coal and Steel Community. Six powers. And it was a common tariff on just those two products, because they were the major products. Now, in 1956, it was expanded. They said, we can make a tariff union on all products. So then you have the European Common Market, 1956. The British are still reluctant to join. That's the problem. The British are close to the United States. They don't want to go into this.
Well,
you follow what I'm saying?
You could really, yeah. You could really take this back even further, I suppose, if you wanted to the whole idea of global governance, which originated back in the 19th century. And you have
nobody said that in the 19th century.
No, nobody ever said. The Fabian Society.
Okay, the
Fabians, the British Fabians, had an idea that they could bring in socialism. Socialism was around in the 19th century. Marxism. And you had, so supposedly, from what I read,
that's true.
You had the Fabians on the West, and then you had the people who believed in conquest in Central Europe. But most of the Fabians were English, like George Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells and people like that.
That's right. They were idealists. They were academics.
They believed that they could bring in this utopian socialist world government.
That's the key.
But incrementally. Through deception. In fact, one of their basic what they used was the idea of a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
And they, so this is, to me, this is sinister. A wolf in sheep's clothing? Come on, give me a break.
Sinister from what point of view?
Well,
from the point of view of the
in other words, it's a wolf hiding in a sheepskin. I mean, that's sinister.
But,
you know, and what does the wolf do? He eats the sheep, right?
Yeah,
that's what he does. The sheep are us.
Yeah, but who's us? The British working class or the
bankers? I mean,
they're
thinking globally. But
globalism, as defined by Marx, is a lot different than the banks of the United States. They're talking about globalism. Well, but that's a different kind of a globalism.
We have, well, okay, but it's internationalism, you could also call it.
All right.
There's also that.
All right, okay.
some people call it internationalism, some people call it globalism.
Yeah, but I don't
know David Rockefeller and the Rockefeller family called himself an internationalist in his autobiography.
That's true. David Rockefeller's still alive.
And he said, he was in his 90s, he's in his 90s, and he actually said, I've seen the quote from the autobiography, that he was working toward the destruction of the United States. He believed that...
That's a stupid confession on his part.
Well, he said, I'm proud of it. He said, I'm proud of it. He said, some people call me an internationalist, and they say that I'm working toward the destruction of the United States, and it's true, and I'm proud of it.
I never read that. That's interesting.
Well, that's a paraphrase, but it more or less.
But you actually saw his memoirs.
I saw. This is a direct quote from his memoirs. And
what year were they written?
David Rockefeller, he's in his 90s. He's the head of the Rockefeller family.
I know who he is.
And, but anyway, so you have a group that wanted to get the people of the world to want world socialism. They want get them to on their side, so they would beg for it. They would want it.
Yeah, but that's banking.
Then you had another group that didn't want to wait for 50 or 100 years.
That's right.
And they wanted it now. And so they financed Hitler. These are financiers and bankers.
You're getting into fascism now. That's a different program.
Fascism, communism, it's still totalitarianism. Either way.
That's a little bit too fast for me. Let's back up a little bit.
But all I'm saying is that as long as we're looking at the big picture, but if we're really talking about the Brexit, and how does the Brexit fit in with this? Well, I think this could be a little bit of a pullback of people being concerned about things getting too big too fast.
That's true.
And this is not just happening in Britain, it's happening in the United States.
That's true.
And in other countries, we have a lot of concerns.
There are a lot of French who want out.
There are French who want out.
Norwegians want out. The Swiss never got in.
Well, they were smart, but you have Le Pen. They always call her, I forget her first name, Madeleine, or the French
I know who it is.
Woman.
Yeah, she's
very smart.
United Kingdom Independence Party, the French's equivalent is Le Pen.
Yeah, UKIP is...
France first. We are French.
Yeah, exactly. And so they are loyal to their own country.
Right.
And this is something that people who like globalism, they want to diminish that. They want to diminish that idea.
Right.
And they want people to think in terms, well, I'm a citizen of the world.
Right. Right.
And it's a very glorious and utopian dream.
It's a utopian
but it's
dream.
really not practical. Realistic
You're saying you sympathize with the exit vote. That's
I
what
do.
Yeah, okay.
I do. The Brexit.
Brexit, yeah, okay, fine. What I'm saying is, as an American, I don't have the power. All I can do is say, as an American citizen, I'll let the British decide. And if the exit people get British democracy reinstalled, good luck. And Merkel, if she succeeds, the British are going to drift toward this global banking system. Mm-hmm. It's going to be the EU banks and the American banks and the British banks pooling the money together. In other words, what the financial union did, and this goes way up to 1991, I think. The French gave up their franc, the Italians gave up the lira, the Dutch gave up the guilder, and nobody cares anything about
And we need to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, but that comes much later.
The only people who didn't give it up was the British.
The British stay out.
The pound.
They want the pound out.
So they were already beginning to pull back. They were already
That's right. They were
worried.
always suspicious.
They were concerned.
That's right. You got it. You got it.
Yeah, so...
but they have to lean, if they stay out, they're going to have to lean on the dollar against the euro.
Well, what do you mean by lean on the dollar?
The British are in debt to the American banks. Let's say the BP oil company. The BP oil company is much weaker than Exxon. You know how the oil oligopoly works. There are seven big oil powers.
Yeah.
They call them the Seven Sisters.
Right.
And this was set up, a cartel was set up in 1927 to control the global oil prices. And this is where Rockefeller is. Rockefeller makes a deal with Sir Detterding. He was a Dutchman who owned the Shell Company. So Rockefeller and Detterding got together and said, okay, if Shell and BP and Standard Oil of New York, and Standard Oil of New Jersey, and Standard Oil of California, and Standard Oil of Ohio, Standard Oil of Indiana, set up a price mechanism, and we charge the wholesale price, we control 90% of the world's fields, tankers, and refineries. The only 10% outside of it was the Soviet Union. Now, Germany and Italy and Spain were totally dependent on the imports from this cartel. That's where fascism comes in the Second World War. Hitler wanted his own sovereign oil. Well, he said, I'm going to conquer it from the Soviet Union. I'm going to be a thief.
He did talk about establishing a new world order in Europe.
The word new order came from Adolf Hitler. Didn't come from... Actually, it was invented by Adolf Hitler.
I don't know about that. H.G. Wells wrote a book called The New World Order.
I never heard of that.
And about 1940. Now, whether he actually created that term, I don't know. But I think the term New World Order has actually been around for quite a while, or a variation on it.
Okay.
But just the idea of a global centralized government. You know, one of the things I always say in my show is that...
When I was a kid, they used to call H.G. Wells World Federal Government. It was a very slow thing. In other words, the British, the Germans, the French would be like the 13 colonies. They would all form a confederation, and that's what the EU is, a confederation. Yeah. And then gradually the confederation would become a federation. So this thing has been evolving.
Political union.
Very, very slowly.
Yeah, and that is Fabianism. That's Fabian socialism.
That's one interpretation of it, yeah.
I mean, yeah, incremental.
And slow.
And the idea that if you put a frog into boiling water and you turn up the heat really slow,
that's right. He
won't jump out. He'll just boil to death.
Yeah, you got
instead of jumping out.
That's right.
And which is, but the problem is that if you have access to information, that's the internet, and in which you have so many different opinions, so much information available, you can learn.
Yeah, but George Orwell. You know the importance of George Orwell?
I do very much.
Big Brother, peace is war.
Well, the only problem with information is the way they're doing it now is you flood the internet with so much information.
Yeah, that's right.
And that people don't know where to look.
That's right.
They don't, because they're just inundated with some of it's true and some of it's not true.
Orwell had a primitive interpretation of it. He thought Big Brother could censor, like Stalin did. That he would have, what do they call it? They could screen out the news. See, well, but he never realized
that was Winston Smith's job. Every day
to hide the news.
He would change the news every day to make it fit with, so that it all harmonized.
Yeah. So there's less torture in the new Big Brother. They can use propaganda more effectively.
Well, it was a very good
beginning of the proper propaganda.
It was a prognostication of the future. It was looking into the future, and it was because he did have an inside track, somewhat, to some of the plans that would come to fruition later. And now, of course, we have algorithms.
That's the speed
very, very powerful computers that can change and are getting better and faster and more powerful and more linked. Right. So that you can, if we go to digital history, let's say your history book.
Throw out all the books. They're closing down Ohio University Library right now.
Let's say your history books go all digital, and you have history, all digital files on computers, on the cloud, worldwide. That means that with one click of a button, you can erase something that you want, and it would erase worldwide.
That's right.
And so this is why we need books. We need hard copy books.
Right.
You cannot get rid of them.
1984, they only had one book available. They were talking about revolution. It was modeled on Trotsky. And Big Brother spies come down and speak They have two-way television. They look into the room.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you hide that?
And that's happening now, of course. We have
a question or comment. What are we halfway through? Well, we're talking about a very vital topic here. It's a very complicated problem. We're talking about the advance of world markets, and the oil industry was the first global industry, headed by Sir Detterding. I forgot his first name. Detterding was his last name, but it slipped my mind. Anyway, I can look it up. He died in 1937, same year that the old John D. Rockefeller died, the head of the Shell Empire. They got the shell from Indonesia because Indonesia used to produce oil, the Saucony vacuum, and that's what led the United States into World War II. The Saucony vacuum made an embargo, and the Japanese couldn't get any oil, so they struck Pearl Harbor.
Well,
and steal the oil.
And this is the true wealth of the world.
Well, oil is one.
Oil is one, but
as you pointed out, information on computers is a number two.
Well, that's important too, but
and
also
the bank's number three.
Also, you have precious metals. You have any kind of asset that has intrinsic value.
Yeah.
This is true wealth.
That's true wealth.
And people who run countries and run multinational corporations know this.
They
know this.
Wait, we had this in a break. I didn't even get around to it. My name is Robert Whaley. I'm a historian from Ohio University, retired. And Dane McCarthy is an old friend of mine because his father, Cliff McCarthy, used to teach art. And Cliff McCarthy was a socialist and sympathetic to socialism, and actually brought a socialist to Athens, the mayor of Milwaukee. Zeinheiser. I think his name was Zionism. It began with a Z. He was a German socialist who was the mayor of Milwaukee. And he was an old man in his 90s.
Wow.
And he brought him to that.
I don't remember that.
Well, you probably didn't attend. But
maybe I was just a kid.
Well, anyway. I'll get the date. Yeah. I can't think of it now. But anyway, he was a closet socialist, but he was also a Unitarian, and he kind of soft-pedaled socialism because he could see with the Cold War on, you're not going to make many converts. So I was one of the first friends of Cliff when I arrived. I met Cliff in Maine, and I had already become somewhat sympathetic to socialism because I was studying the Spanish Civil War. And the Spanish Civil War was a conflict in Spain between liberal democracy and democratic socialism and totalitarian communism on the same side in this coalition called the Popular Front. And on the other side were the Catholic Church, the banks, the landlords, and an infant fascist movement and so forth and so on. But Hitler and Mussolini intervene and install Franco in power, and then fascism expands into Czechoslovakia, Poland, and we have the Second World War. So some people see the Spanish Civil War as the first shot in the Second World War. Right. So that was the thesis of my book, see.
Right, right.
But this is a little more complex from my point of view because there are four corners to the square: the military corner, the political corner, the economic corner, and the intellectual idealistic corner. So socialism is in conflict with communism and Christianity and Islam. Who controls the ideas? Religion just can't be thrown out. That's a false. Atheism will never win.
One thing we haven't talked about yet, getting back to the Brexit.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that the immigration
issue? That immigration is a big issue.
That's a huge issue.
Absolutely.
And a lot of Brits are very, very concerned about the potential for massive, well, not just Muslims, but also from other EU countries like
Greece,
Poland,
Yeah,
Romania.
they're on.
And you have countries that are where people are essentially broke, they're desperate, and they see the green hills and beautiful fields of England as paradise.
And England still has the Channel. And the United States still has the Atlantic Ocean.
But amazingly enough, you have the Channel Tunnel, the Channel.
Yeah.
And for, I don't know how long, a year or more, there have been thousands of young men, mostly young men, camped
on the
at the entrance to the tunnel.
Yeah, that's right.
And literally fighting with the police
to get on there.
To get into, they want to walk the tunnel all the way underneath the English Channel to get to Britain.
Yeah,
They're actually trying to break through.
They hide and track the trailers, just like the Mexicans.
And they hide, and they try to hide and get in, yeah. And I don't know how many have actually gotten through. I don't think too many.
Who knows? We don't know how many illegals are in the United States.
Well, it's true. It's true.
How many Mexicans are here? Who knows? 11 million or 15 million? 20 million? Who knows?
Or 25 million. Yeah, exactly. Well, Nigel Farage, who led the Brexit movement with the leadership of the UKIP party, who recently resigned.
Right. You got it.
Said
You're right up to date.
That he felt that someone asked him, they said, isn't our situation similar to what's going on in the United States? He said, well, yes and no. U.S. immigration is illegal. They're dealing with illegal immigration. We're dealing with legal immigration. We've completely lost our sovereignty.
All right.
And he's, of course, talking about all the legal immigrants. And now this may be overkill, but he claims there are 500 million people, 500 million people, who want to get to the United Kingdom.
Oh, I believe that's possible.
500 million.
How do you get them in here?
Well, yeah, I mean, England is actually is very highly populated. It's densely populated.
Sure.
One of the most densely populated countries in the world.
Yes, that's okay.
And so you don't have the vast spaces, empty spaces, like we do. And so the British people, except for the Scots, the Scottish people don't seem to have an issue with
they changed their mind.
European Union.
They changed their mind. Originally,
they voted to stay. They voted, but they're in the UK,
they voted twice. They voted last year
for independence,
but it was a close vote.
Yeah,
and they lost. The Scots independence lost.
Yeah, you're right.
Now
Scotland's a great deal more liberal, isn't it, than England itself?
It was much more socialist. Most of the socialists lived in Scotland because it's a poor country. And London is where the financial center is. Sure. This is the upper middle class, and they make their money in insurance, banks, and real estate.
Yeah.
They control the land.
Yeah. And I also heard an interesting interview with a Swiss guy.
Yeah.
And somebody was asking him, why did Switzerland never join the EU? And he said, well, we thought about it, but we decided not to. And it's a good thing, because considering the situation in the EU, you have high unemployment. Right. In some countries, like Greece, like Spain, you have among younger people 40 to 50% unemployment.
Right.
You know, and so this is just absolutely unacceptable. And what are those people, what are those kids going to do? They're talking about a whole lost generation.
That's right.
You know.
Well, back 10 years ago, the Greek used to learn German and go to Germany and get an education. And then they became a medical doctor, or they became a banker, and they went back to Greece, and they got in the shipping business. And there was a subsidization of Greek immigrants to compete with Turks. And the British would rather have a Greek than a Turk. A lot of Turks want to get in. Okay.
Trying to get into Great Britain.
Yeah. Now, Merkel had a shortage of labor because the German high technology was so advanced that the mechanics said, okay, we got a big salary, we're going to go live in an apartment, and we're not going to do the dirty work. We're not going to clean up the garbage. We'll hire some Turks to do that. So you bring in Turks to clean up the garbage and to take care of the dirty work, just like the Mexicans come to the United States. It's hypocrisy. The big business wants Mexicans to come here to pick the stuff out in California in the hot sun. Okay. And the Democrats want Mexicans to come in because they'll stack up the Democratic Party with Democratic votes.
Right.
And so the Democrats and Republicans are lying to each other.
But that's right. But one thing about it is that the Democrats may be, this is sort of sort of half an opinion. But I think there is some evidence that once they get here, some Hispanics will actually vote Republican.
Yeah,
because,
that's possible.
Because and also anti-immigration, because they feel like, well, I'm here.
That's right.
Why should I be for more immigration? Right. And I'm afraid they're going to take my job. So they become Americanized somewhat in their thinking. And they say, I got something good here. And I don't want to.
The Catholic Church still has some influence on Mexican thought.
Yeah, but one of the reasons why so many immigrants from Mexico want to come here is because of NAFTA.
Yeah, NAFTA helped the banks.
NAFTA is these trade deals and the EU mostly they help the wealthy, the very top.
Plutocracy, right?
1/10 to 1%.
Yeah,
and this is the plutocracy.
That's what
it doesn't help the ordinary people.
Campaigning on.
It doesn't help the ordinary people. Yeah, it really doesn't. But what they did was American farmers, because of NAFTA, were able to grow all this extra food, and then they just dumped it very cheaply on on Mexico.
Right.
And so the Mexican farmers could not compete.
That's right.
And they couldn't pay their taxes.
Right.
And they couldn't feed their families, and they couldn't keep their farms running, and they lost their land.
That's right.
And so they're left, and I've actually heard Mexicans say this, is that they had no other choice but to come to the United States.
That's right.
So we have a whole situation that is, in a way, started by Bill Clinton and the Democrats back in the 90s.
Well, it was a bipartisan thing. The Bush negotiated it.
Yeah, the Republicans probably liked it too because it's good for big business.
And Bill Clinton signed it. But the details of that treaty were already negotiated.
Well,
and the interesting
but you have to blame the president. I mean, he's the guy the president is the top dog.
He didn't have to sign it, but he signed it.
No, he didn't have to sign it.
He didn't have to sign it.
But he did.
But he did.
And he said,
"Hey, buddy, he'll sign anything. It was the money."
Well, yeah, and that's
Bill Clinton came from Arkansas.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on Arkansas. Holy Moses! That's a third world country in itself.
Okay, who's going to finance his election? See, how does Bill Clinton become the president? He's got to have somebody to pay for the finance.
You had very powerful people who saw him. They noticed him. This is a smart guy.
Yeah.
And they said this guy could be good for us.
That's right.
And we're going to help raise him up. He didn't do it on his own.
No, he didn't.
He was chosen.
Yeah, he was chosen.
They knew that he could play ball. He knew which side of the bread his butter was on.
Yeah, that's right.
And he also had a good vice that they could use against him if ever he got out of line, which was the women. The vice is the women for Bill Clinton. They like guys that have flaws that they can exploit.
The sex problem. Both Hillary and Bill had sexual, we'll say, improprieties according to the old Christian religion.
Well, some people think that Hillary is a lesbian.
That's possible. I haven't proved it.
Well,
and her daughter Chelsea is more suspect than she is.
Oh, really?
I don't know
about Chelsea.
Well, she came here and gave a speech. I heard Chelsea.
Okay.
In the campaign.
Yeah.
And the 90% of it was got to advance the cause of the gays. What do they call it? LBGT, yeah.
Well, that's sort of almost American policy right now.
It's a propaganda organization.
Yeah, and it also, I
think... But
it
pretends to be a religion.
Well...
It tends to be super tolerant.
You're talking about political correctness and gender fluidity. And this is... there's a reason why that this could be happening, and that would be to destroy the traditional family.
That's right.
And to make the world, remake the world in a whole different set of values and morals. And I'm reminded, actually, frankly, I hate to say this, but of Rome in the last days of the Empire.
That's true. That is very true.
I can't help thinking about that.
That is very true.
That we're seeing almost the same kind of decline.
It's very clear that American society is in decay. it's very clear that the British society is in decay.
Yeah. So it's a cycle.
The question is,
how far are we going to go down?
When do you date the decay, and how gradual is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my thesis is that democracy peaked under Franklin Roosevelt.
You understand that what we just said is extremely not politically correct.
Well, that political correct just means propaganda. That's New York Times defines what is political correct.
And so they're trying to. It's hate speech. We're haters. We might be considered to be haters.
Well, they can call me anything they want, but I'm just a citizen.
Yeah, I am too.
But what I'm saying is,
and fortunately, I'm allowed to have my opinion. I hope.
All I'm saying is that Truman was a weaker Democrat than Roosevelt, and he substituted anti-communism for democracy. And Eisenhower was just about the same as Truman, but he also was an anti-communist. And John Foster Dulles was his spokesman.
Oh, he was a bad guy.
Yeah,
he was a bad dude.
When Eisenhower got rid of Dulles, he went back to the military-industrial complex, and the old Eisenhower came out and said, "Watch out for the military-industrial complex."
The last speech of Eisenhower.
And the problem is, very few Democrats have paid any attention to it.
Very prophetic.
Yeah. And Eisenhower was the most liberal Republican we've had since Franklin Roosevelt's death.
Well, you know, some people have said that Donald Trump is more liberal in some ways than Hillary Clinton is. Have you heard that? Have you heard that?
You have to define liberal very carefully. I don't think he's liberal on the Constitution. I don't think he understands the First Amendment. I don't think he understands how wars begin and how they end. He's stupid for the State Department, okay? He still thinks the United States can win some kind of a war. But he's not in command of the Army and the CIA and the Navy and the Air Force.
He would be if he was president.
No.
He's the commander-in-chief.
No. Let's go back to Art Gish. You know Art Gish?
Yeah.
Okay. Art Gish told me, and I agree with Art Gish, the day that Obama was elected, he was a total prisoner in the White House. Obama is a great propagandist. He knows how to give a speech on television.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But he does not control the finance. He does not control the CIA. He does not control the Defense Department. He doesn't know very much about foreign affairs. He came from Hawaii. He knows very little about the 48 lower states. So he won the presidency. I voted for Obama the first time. He was better than McCain.
Yeah.
A 51% confidence.
Yeah, he was.
But I didn't have any confidence that in the long run. Okay.
Yeah. And he also lied. He said, well, you know, we're going to have more transparency than we've ever seen before.
He doesn't grant any interviews. He's never been interviewed by an outsider.
And he prosecutes whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Very high, very, you know, they go after the whistleblowers.
The Wikipedia biography of Obama is very short.
Yeah. And his past is very mysterious.
Very mysterious.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And he's had some flaky sex problems too.
And you've heard about that. I wasn't going to bring that up, but we're not supposed to care about that stuff. And ultimately, I suppose it doesn't matter. But when people are hiding in the closet about stuff like that, that means that that information can be used against them.
That's true.
If they were trying to hide something.
That's right.
You know, and this is one of the reasons why I think the establishment is so fearful of Trump. Because,
why?
Well, Trump doesn't have anything to hide. What's he going to hide? They can't. What are they going to hold over Trump? He just blathers it all out.
Okay, I don't think that a real estate dealer can defeat Wall Street. Do you?
I don't know if it's up to him.
Can't defeat a billionaire.
It's about the American people, who they vote for.
The American people are voters. Okay.
It's about who they vote for.
Yeah. Well, okay. Trump has a following among high school. 74% of the voters are high school. 74%
of Trump voters.
74% of all voters only graduate from high school.
Oh, high school graduates. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, high school or below.
High school or below graduates.
Now,
of all voters, 74%.
Yeah, and Trump is winning those because they say Hillary's lying. Well, they have evidence that Hillary is lying.
Right.
But it's a very simple view of the world, okay?
Well, most people
But
are
there's
quite
nobody
simple.
in the State Department is voting for Trump. He gets practically zero vote among the State Department people, and he gets zero vote among Jews. I can't think of a single Jew who's voting for Trump.
Well,
they read books, okay?
Right, but
they read the New York Times.
Think of the alternative.
What do you mean the alternative? Who might
Hillary Clinton. That's the alternative.
Well, my wife didn't support Bernie. I said an honest Jew is better than a crooked Christian. But she believes in feminism, and she believes that Hillary will help the feminist group in the United States. I say it's a...
Hillary is so hated.
Who knows?
By so many people.
That's true.
You know, there's a lawsuit against the primary voting result in California. There is some real shenanigans that went on.
I believe that.
Against Bernie. And she, of course, won California, but she was determined to get California. That was crucial. She needed California.
She put advertising money
and
in
a lot of people like Bernie in California. A lot of people like Bernie. And so whether or not this will be an issue, I don't know. But she always has a cloud over her, always. Ever since she's been in politics.
Yeah.
Even before she got in politics, there's a cloud. You know, she's being called up to defend herself.
Yeah.
And so it just happened again. And as you know, the FBI declared that even though she acted recklessly. And carelessly.
Carelessly, right.
With her emails, it would not be standard practice for a prosecutor to indict her. Really? Really? Or is it that the Clinton family is so powerful?
No, not Trump, but Obama. Obama's not going to tell the FBI, go arrest Hillary. Obama is supporting Hillary.
He is supporting Hillary.
Now, I think that ultimately may hurt Hillary.
Now, that ultimately may hurt Hillary. Yes, exactly, right. Because, I mean...
I'm not predicting the election. I have no idea who's going to win.
I don't know either. I don't know either. You know, I don't want to make a prediction either.
Yeah. But we do know that plutocracy is on the way up, and the average voter is in trouble in the United States and in the United Kingdom.
Right. And whether or not the Brexit will turn out well for United Kingdom or not,
it's too early to tell.
I don't know.
It's too early to tell.
Too early to tell. Now, the stock market did go down.
And it went up again.
But then it went back up.
Yeah.
Now, and Cameron, the Liberals, were predicting the sky would fall if Brexit passed, but it really didn't happen. Now the banks are trying to smooth out things
and they're
saying,
renegotiating.
Don't worry, it's not as bad as you think.
Yeah, we might
so they're backtracking.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll figure out a way to make this work.
And maybe Hillary will let them talk it out. Hillary says wait until October. See, Cameron hasn't resigned yet. He has to wait until October.
Right.
So they're playing around for the next couple of months. Well, maybe there'll be a reconsideration.
Well, but...
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to do that, though, at this point, because it was Cameron who wanted to do the referendum in the first place.
That's what he said.
He thought...
Whether that was a trick or not, we don't know.
And then he said, he thought, I think, he took a gamble.
He took a gamble.
And he lost the gamble.
But maybe he can win again.
Because if he had been able to get the British people to vote to remain, then that would have been a feather in his cap, and that would have strengthened his position a lot. Well, it didn't work out the way
Well, he knew the money was on the other side. The Tory party goes with the banks, the real estate company, and the insurance company.
I think a lot of...
We had 3 bubbles, you know, in 2000.
Well, but I thought that the banks were not very happy with Brexit.
It depends what bank it is. You see, the stock market is played every day.
Right.
So there are winners and losers every day.
Right. And
so
you can bet on, it depends on how you bet.
Let's look at it from the point of view of a German. who wants to go to England to learn the English language and set up a English language German small company. So for that PhD student, he wants to have no visa to go to Cambridge and learn the tricks of the trade. So the exit hurts the German technical class, the computer men, the bankers, the people in technology, because English is the language of the future technology. There are problems with French and German. They both have to have accent marks. So English is the lingua franca of the world. The Chinese are learning it.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
So the Germans would like to keep Britain in the EU because that is a place for them to get a good education in English and go back to Germany. And
are you telling me Germany doesn't have a good education system?
It has a good education system. But when you learn physics in Germany, in the German language, and you got your degree, all of the future physics is going to be written in English.
Most of the young Germans that I've always talked to, they speak very good English.
Yeah, they learn English. That's exactly correct. They want to stay in. They want Britain to stay in the common market because it's a good place for the student to learn English. To come to the United States, he's got to pay more money because the American dollar is going to go up.
Well,
so fewer of them.
They're going to be, like you said, they're going to be winners and losers on anything.
Okay. You got 2 minutes. We have to stop now. You want to make a big conclusion about where we're going in the future in England and in the United States, or what?
United States. Well, one thing we haven't talked about is
a lot of things. We have to have another show.
The European Union is only the first step in creating that wonderful global government that they are trying to set up right now. And one of the next steps would be a North American Union, where you put together United States, Mexico, and Canada.
They've already done that. NAFTA.
Well,
that's it. Is the United States.
It's step by step. Again, it's incremental. Yeah. And they're refusing to honor the U.S. borders, and so we have this problem with all these illegal people in the United States. Well, guess what the solution is?
Right.
Dissolve the border completely and make a North American Union.
Okay.
Then you have the free flow.
Okay. So
unimpeded, and suddenly all the illegals become legal. They all become legal.
You have a minute.
Problem
solved. I have a minute. Okay. My minute is this. You're a little bit too future-oriented, and I just had a limited thing, what's happened in the last couple of weeks. And my conclusion is that it is useful to see that debate is the oxygen of democracy, and we have on the table about 6 different debates that are unresolved, including immigration and the price of money in England and the United States, and the debt, and the future election. So I will leave it at that point. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
And you'll have to come next week,
Always
if you're
fun.
willing.
Always fun, Bob. Or you could be on my show.
Or I'll come on your show if you wish.